Thank you for joining us for this DDI CADcast. My name is Cody Armstrong, and the topic is What's New 2014 Parts and Features. So the first thing I want to go over in the area of parts and features for SOLIDWORKS 2014 are the enhancements to fillets, and in particular conic fillets. So I'm just going to jump right into the software and show you this. This is actually an option of the fillet command. So I'm going to roll back here and delete one of these fillets, and we're going to recreate it. Now, as I mentioned, it's an option of the fillet command, and what you'll see when I define it as constant size, you'll see the option of profile and an option in the drop down for conic row or conic radius. So I can define by row value or radius. It works much in the same way a normal fillet does. You select your edge, but you're defining the row value here. Okay. And you can see it creates the conic fillet shape by adjusting the row value here. So that's the new conic fillet option. It works for the constant fillet types. It also works for variable radius fillets. Essentially the same thing applies. When I go to variable radius, I can come in and define, and it works just like a variable radius, but you have one more option in my case for row. Right? So I can come in and define, maybe different radius values and different row values for my variable fillet. So it works for constant, variable. It also works for face fillets. You will see the same option. You find a good face fillet, select the two faces. You'll see the same row option, conic row option here as well. So that is the new conic fillets. Again, it's under profile. You'll see conic row, conic radius. It's supported for constant, variable, and face fillets. Let's jump back and move on to an enhancement in extruded cuts. There is a small change to the interface for extruded cuts I think is worth pointing out. So when you do a cut in 2014, if you right-click while in the cut extrude command, you'll see an option for through all both directions. So you no longer have to check the box and then select through all. The through all both directions in the right click menu. It is also in the drop down menu under direction 1. So you no longer have to check the box and set it to through all. It just saves you a moment when you're setting it to through all both directions. So for those users that use that command a lot, it's just a time saver. So let's jump back to enhancement to holes, and in particular Hole Wizard. So probably the biggest enhancement to Hole Wizard in SOLIDWORKS 2014 is the support for slots. So I'm going to jump into that, and I'll show you a couple other little things that you'll see in the 2014 release in Hole Wizard. So one of the first things you'll notice are the icon changes. The icons are hopefully a little bit more clear and easy to understand exactly what you're selecting, but you'll see the icons have changed in the 2014 release. You'll also see a third row here of icons. These are the slots that I was referring to. So we have a counterbore, countersunk, and normal slot. And they're applied much in the same way you'd apply a hole. I select the icon that I want. I want a counterbore slot in this case. What type? What standard, what type of bolt, what size, so on. I can even go to the Positions tab and define its location. You'll see the dimensions that drive the slot, even add relationships. You'll see it's essentially a center line that I'm adjusting here. I can add a relationship, for instance, to this edge, make them parallel. So you can constrain it in the same ways that you can constrain a normal sketch. Of course, this is a slot, and so it just simplifies the process of applying this. So all I really have to do is apply the slot definition, hit OK, and there are my slots. So again, it's really just a third row to the Hole Wizard. Just allows you to apply, again, counterbore, countersunk, and normal slots. Also new to the Hole Wizard, if I call it back up again, is this option when defining a drilled hole for show decimal values. So under whole specification on the left hand side, you're going to see a checkbox option that says show decimal values, and like the name implies, it just gives you the decimal values of all the different drill sizes. So it's a neat way to be able to go through it. A lot of people have this list up on their cubicle wall or on their wall in their office of what the conversions are. You have it now in the whole specifications drop down. So let's jump back to our PowerPoint and move on. The next thing I want to get into are some additional options when deleting features in SOLIDWORKS 2014. So when you're deleting things in SOLIDWORKS, we've all seen the dialog that asks you to confirm the deletion and the option to delete either an absorbed or a child feature or features, right? Depending on whether it's a part or assembly, you have the option to delete the children feature or the absorbed features in the case of a part. And it's always kind of been an all or none thing. So now in SOLIDWORKS 2014, if you delete a feature that has children, right, or absorbed features, for instance, if I delete a plane, you have an option here for advanced that gives you more selective control. And like I said before, in previous versions it was kind of an all or none thing. You either checked the box that said delete or you didn't check it. But now in the latest version of the software, you can actually come in and define which features you do want to keep and which ones you do not want to keep, right, based on the checkboxes. So it allows you to be a little bit more selective. You have to click the button that says advanced when defining which ones you want to delete, right? So when you want to be selective, you have to do the advanced selection and then define via checkbox which features you want to keep and which features you want to get rid of. So that's the new enhancements to the delete features. So when you're deleting features, you're going to see this option again under advanced. So jumping back, I want to move into some new enhancements to reference geometry. So two big enhancements to reference geometry that I really like to get into. The first is an enhancement to planes, inserting planes. And the second is an enhancement to points. So reference geometry points. So let's jump into the first one, and that is an enhancement to planes. One of the first things you're going to see when you're inserting a plane in 2014 is this arrow in the middle of your plane. You'll see the blue arrow here. That is the normal direction of the plane. We never really previously displayed this. You never really had control over it in previous versions as well. In the 2014 release, you have an option on the left-hand side to flip normal, and it will flip the direction of that arrow and allow you to flip the normal of the plane. And this could be particularly useful if I'm inserting a plane for features I've already created and I know the normal direction of those features. It just saves me the time of having the features fail and then having to go back and edit and flip the direction of a cut, for instance. If I know the normal direction of the feature, I can specify it when I'm inserting the plane. You can specify it when you're inserting the plane with the option for flip normal. You can also specify it in the right click menu. You'll see a little icon in the top right corner here for flip normal. So when you right click a plane, you'll see an option to flip normal, a little icon there, and it essentially does the same thing. So now you can control the normal direction of a plane when you insert it. Another enhancement to reference geometry is that of points. I'm going to go ahead and call up a point command. I want to point out a couple different scenarios for things we couldn't do in previous versions. So there's some new selections that I can make and get points where in other scenarios I couldn't. And the first is an axis and an axis. In previous releases we couldn't show the intersection of two axes, and now we can. If I select two axes, you'll see there my point. Also an axis and a plane. Okay, you'll see the virtual intersection of those two. That's where the point is created. Also an axis and a face. You'll see it creates a point at the virtual intersection of those two. Also neat, and I have had quite a few users ask for this functionality, is the ability to put a point on a point. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on sketches, and I want to show the sketch for this particular cut. Okay, here it is here. Now if I want to put a point on a point, it's just a matter of selecting a point, right, in my sketch. And you'll see the on a sketch point option of the point command. Okay? So now you can place a point on a sketch point, whether it's the end of a center line or just a point in general. You can now attach a reference geometry point to a sketch point, which was a previous limitation in reference geometry. So let's jump back and move on to some enhancements to patterns. So the enhancements to patterns come in the way of better support for when a pattern creates multiple bodies. And I want to go through an example of this and kind of explain what I mean. We're all used to the dialog box that pops up when you cut a body in half. So if I create a cut and I cut a body in two, you'll see a box that says bodies to keep. But you never saw that dialog in a pattern that created multiple bodies. So here I have this pattern, and let's just say, for instance, I increased the count to where it overlapped and created multiple bodies. Right? This would create essentially a multi-bodied part. So when I hit OK, what I would get in the past is it would randomly select which bodies to keep. Now in the 2014 release, if I hit OK to this, I'm going to get that same dialog that I'd get in a normal cut extrude, for instance. Right? Asking me, do you want to keep all bodies, do you want to keep specific bodies, and then allowing me to choose which ones. I can even specify that these bodies only apply to a specific configuration. Right? So I can be configuration specific with it as well. But the big enhancement here is just this dialog when a body ends up creating multiple bodies, or excuse me, when a pattern ends up creating multiple bodies just from its creation. Like in this scenario where I cut it and it creates a multi-bodied part, I now get the options for bodies to keep that I didn't get in previous versions. Again, in previous versions, it would randomly select which bodies I was going to keep. So that's one enhancement to patterns. Another enhancement to patterns that you'll notice is when you select a pattern in the tree, it'll now highlight the seed feature. Okay, you'll see there's actually two colors displayed there. I have that baby blue color, which is my selected color 1, right? It's my typical selected icon 1. But then you'll see the pink color. The pink color is the seed feature. So now whenever you select a pattern in your feature tree, it'll highlight the seed feature. And this is, for those that you had to hunt down the seed feature. Sometimes people would even make them separate colors or have different ways of distinguishing the seed feature from others so they could find it easier. Well, now when you select the pattern from the tree, it's going to highlight in a different color. The last enhancement I want to go over in the area of patterns is the enhancement to tooltips. If you mouse over a feature, a pattern feature in SOLIDWORKS 2014 in the feature manager, you're going to see a tooltip that gives you a lot more information than previous releases. Things like what type of pattern, what's the seed instance, how many, what's the distance between, right, or the angle between in this case, is it equal spacing, so on. So it gives you kind of a breakdown of the entire pattern just by mousing over the pattern in your feature tree. And it's just an enhanced tooltip. You can actually shut it off, so if you don't care for it, in the system options under display selection, there's an option for enhanced tooltips right here. Display pattern and information tooltips down here at the bottom. It is on by default. So by default, when you mouse over a pattern in SOLIDWORKS 2014, you're going to see that enhanced tooltip. So let's jump back to the last item in our list, and that is mass properties. So definitely the big enhancement to mass properties for SOLIDWORKS 2014 is the support for volumetric units. And I want to give you a couple good examples of this, and I've been asked this probably dozens of times using SOLIDWORKS, is how do I tell how many gallons of water my tank holds, or how do I tell how many liters of liquid this design will hold? And my answer in the past has never been great. You could figure out with a weight or maybe other methods, but there's never been a direct way to do this in previous releases of the software. What you'll notice now when going to mass properties, And then going to the options for mass properties is under per unit volume, you have some additional options. Things like liters, pints, gallons, all now options in SOLIDWORKS 2014. So these volumetric units allow me to select something and define by gallons, for instance. So here I've modeled a 5-gallon bucket. I have water modeled in it, right? So I select the water, I select mass properties, and you'll see it reports the volume in gallons. So that's 5 US gallons of water in my case. So it makes it as an easy way to detect, okay, I have 5-gallon tank or I have 10-gallon tank, because you model it, you model the liquid, and then just do a volume, figure out the volume from mass properties. So new support for volumetric units. So the last thing I want to point out with regards to mass properties is the default behavior in SOLIDWORKS 2014 has changed just a bit. If you do not specify any material, so if you create a part and do not specify material, SOLIDWORKS will assume the density of water. So it'll affect the mass and inertia calculations that you'll see in mass properties. So again, these values are based on, of course, the density of the material that's defined. If you do not define a material, it will assume the density of water. So it's of course important to define your material if you're using volume, mass, inertia calculations. So that's it for the enhancements to parts and features. For other CAD-casts, visit us at www.youtube.com/DDICAD or www.ddicad.com/TechCenter. Thank you.